Good evening, everyone. I'm so happy to welcome everyone back to Korean Cultural Society of Boston's 2024 Korean Heritage Symposium. I'm Ji-young Kim, curator of Korean art at the Peabody Essex Museum. And this is the fourth year of this symposium series. I'm so honored to be the moderator for this year, for 2 years for this series. So, yes, I really want to also thank President Kim and all the board members of the KCSB for their devotion and all their tremendous effort that made this happen and ongoing for so many years. And thank everybody to join this very important and also very valuable event. So tonight, it is my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Yeonmi Kim. Okay, so Dr. Yeonmi Kim is Harvard Yenching Visiting Scholar of Harvard University this year, and she's also Associate Professor of Asian Art History at Ewha Women's University. She got her PhD from Harvard University in 2010, and formerly she was an assistant professor at the Ohio State University and also Yale University. She is the editor of New Perspectives on Early Korean Art from Silla to Korea, and co-editor of many special issues of Asian and Buddhist art journals. She is a grantee of the Robert H. N. Ho Family Foundation Research Fellowship in East Asian Studies, and she's currently completing her book manuscript, Architecture of Virtuality, Pagodas of the Liao Empire. So she's a really prominent scholar of Buddhist art. And then, yeah, I'm very excited to hear from Dr. Kim about Korean temple today. Dr. Kim?
Well, thank you, Dr. Ji-yeon Kim, for so nicely introducing me. And I would appreciate, I'm grateful to President Byung-guk Kim for inviting me here. Okay, so today I will talk about the Korean temples. And well, this is a photograph that I took at Songgwangsa Monastery. Isn't it really beautiful? Okay. Okay. And I want to begin my lecture with this question. What is the most unique architectural monument in the Buddhist temple? Which means that what is the architectural monument that you cannot see outside of a Buddhist temple, for example, in palace? The answer is the pagoda. Pagoda is uniquely Buddhist architectural monument, and throughout the Asian Buddhist world, from India to East Asia, you can see pagodas everywhere inside a temple. So today's focus of my lecture will be the pagoda and the temple. And let's begin with the Three Kingdoms period, which accepted the Buddhism for the first time in our history. So the Korean Peninsula accepted Buddhism between the 4th and the 6th centuries. And we will go through some representative temples from Baekje and Silla. This is perhaps the most famous surviving Buddhist pagoda from the Baekje dynasty, which is the West Stone Pagoda at Maitreya Temple, or Miruksa, which was built in the year 639. And this is the oldest stone pagoda surviving in Korea. Well, the building material stone is important here because if we take a look at Chinese pagodas, the great majority of them were built with brick or timbers. And if you go to Japan, probably you will see a lot of timber pagodas, but not that many stone pagodas. So one of the characteristics of Korean Buddhist temple is that we have a lot of stone pagodas. And the one that you're looking at on the screen is the oldest stone Korean pagoda that is surviving today. And let's take a look at its current site. I will first show you this video, which shows the current site of the Miruksa temple or the Maitreya temple. Very short, but very beautiful video. So this is the West Stone Pagoda from the Baekje dynasty, and the one you're looking at here is a modern restoration of an old pagoda. Well, this is a reconstruction model of the Maitreya temple. So originally, this large temple had one huge timber pagoda made of wood, and then two stone pagodas, and only the part of the west stone pagoda survives today. And this West Stone Pagoda received restoration between 2001 and 2017. And during the restoration, they completely dismantled this stone pagoda and reassembled the stones. And during the restoration, they found this beautiful reliquary set in 2009. If you take a look at this reliquary set, you can see this outer reliquary and the inner reliquary. So this inner reliquary was originally contained in this outer reliquary or exterior reliquary. So you can open this exterior or outer reliquary like this, so that you can contain this inner one inside it. And it has beautiful details. You can see these very sophisticated engravings all over its body. And the inner reliquary is made of pure gold, while the outer reliquary is gilt bronze, which means that it was made of bronze and then gilded. But then this inner reliquary was made with pure gold. And what did they contain? In the inner reliquary, there were the Buddha's relics. As you may know, the historical Buddha Shakyamuni was cremated, and from the ashes, people found these kind of small semi-jewel-like relics. So the basic function of a pagoda is enshrinement of the Buddha's relics. Well, if you want to know more about the Buddha's relics, you can ask me questions after my lecture. And the second question, then who built this pagoda? According to the Samgukgyusa, or the memorabilia of the Three Kingdoms, it is written that the pagoda was built by King Mu, or Muwang of the Baekje Kingdom, and his wife, who was Princess Seonhwa from Silla. So many people believed this historical record, but during the restoration of this pagoda, people found this inscription inscribed on a golden plate together with that reliquary which I just showed you. And according to this inscription, the founder of the Maitreya temple, so the person who built it, was the Empress of King Mu, who was the daughter of Satek Chokdok, who was an officer of the Baekje Kingdom. So it was not the King Mu, it was not Princess Seonhwa from Silla, but it was an empress who was actually a daughter of a Baekje official who built this pagoda and also the entire temple. So it was built by a woman. So it was a really new discovery that people found in 2009. Okay. By the way, the purpose of the restoration, this restoration was not the discovery of the reliquary and the inscription. They were accidentally found. Then what was the initial purpose of this restoration? Well, this pagoda was probably a nine-story pagoda in its original state, but at some point during the Joseon dynasty, half of it collapsed. And in these photographs, which were taken in 1910, you can see how unstable this remaining part of the stone pagoda was. This is the frontal side of the pagoda, and this is the back side of the pagoda. And it looks like the pagoda will collapse at any time. It may collapse at any time. So during the colonial period, what happened is that a Japanese scholar known as Sekino Tadashi restored this stone pagoda, the remaining part, in order to prevent the possible further collapse of the monument. So what he did was he just pasted the back part with cement. Why cement? Because in the early 20th century, the cement was the new material and the wonder material. So they used cement everywhere. And they thought that at that time, the cement was the best material to restore or preserve this stone pagoda. But it's very ugly. And in the long term, cement is not good for old monuments. Yeah, look at this. It's not very beautiful. So during this early 21st century restoration, the Korean government completely removed the ugly cement and dismantled the pagoda and reassembled it again. And this is the result. So from the frontal part, it looks about the same, but from the back, you can see that the ugly and harmful cement were completely removed. Okay. Well, some of you might question why the Korean government restored it back to the complete nine-story shape. But in contemporary times, the basic purpose of restoration is the preservation of the current state. And if we want to restore this pagoda back to the nine-story pagoda, well, there are also like different opinions about the original number of the stories of this pagoda. We have to add imagination to restore the lost part. So we don't do that nowadays. Okay, so now we can move on to the representative temples of the Silla kingdom. The Silla kingdom accepted Buddhism in the year 527, and perhaps the most famous temple built by the Silla dynasty is the Imperial Dragon Temple, or Hwangyongsa. On the right, you can see the computer reconstruction image of the Imperial Dragon Temple and its nine-story pagoda. And on the left, you can see the current site of this temple. Okay, and I will show you this video, which shows the reconstruction of Hwangyongsa in computer software. It's very beautiful. even today, there's no no Korean temple which has this kind of huge pagoda. Unfortunately, this 9-story pagoda at the Imperial Dragon Monastery disappeared or destroyed when the Mongols invaded Korea during the Korea dynasty. Okay. And this is the current site of the Hwangyongsa Monastery. It was a really, really big monastery. And in its center, there was the part where I marked with the red box is the place of the 9-story pagoda of this monastery. And this is a photograph taken during the excavation of this pagoda site. And in the center, you can see this stone that had supported the heart pillar of the 9-story pagoda of Hwangyongsa. Then what is the heart pillar? Heart pillar is the huge pillar that goes through the entire pagoda from the pedestal parts up to the top of the pagoda. And what is interesting, oh, by the way, this is a photograph of the 5-story pagoda at Horyuji Monastery in Japan. Because this is one of the oldest and most well-preserved timber pagoda remaining in East Asia. Many people use this pagoda when they teach about pagoda. As an example, when they teach about East Asian pagoda. And in this section drawing, you can see this huge heart pillar. And what is the function of heart pillar? Interestingly, this heart pillar doesn't have any practical function or architectural function, which means that if you take out this heart pillar out of the monument will still stand there. It doesn't have any practical function, but it has a very important symbolic meaning, which means that it symbolizes the center of the world, center of the cosmos. And well, it also has some function in a sense because oftentimes people enshrined the reliquary set below the heart pillar, then it becomes very difficult to move the heart pillar and steal the precious reliquaries. And these are the reliquaries found under the stone supporting the heart pillar of the Hwangyongsa 9-story pagoda. And if you visit the site of the Imperial Dragon Temple, although most of the structures of the temple buildings are gone, you can see the remaining stone bases of the pagoda and also various monastery buildings. And also you can visit small memorial hall. And inside this memorial hall, you can see this miniature reconstruction model of the 9-story pagoda. It is a miniature model, but it's still pretty big. If you stand in front of this model, your height will be about this tall. But it is still a miniature model of the actual pagoda. If you take a look at the detail of this miniature model, you can see lots of small roof tiles. And on the right, you're looking at various types of roof tiles from Korea. And if we imagine the combined weight of each of these roof tile, Well, if you just hold one roof tile, it's already pretty heavy. And imagine these thousands of the weight of these thousands of roof tiles. The weight will be unimaginably huge. And the difficulty of making traditional timber pagoda or traditional timber housing is the difficulty lies in the support of this huge weight of the roof tiles. It was 9-story pagoda, so the roof tiles of those 9 stories was really huge. And in order to carry those, transfer the huge weight of the roof tiles to each pillars, they had to make very complicated bracket sets by assembling different parts of the wood. What is surprising here is that this pagoda was built purely by assembling different wooden pieces. They didn't use any nails, they didn't use any steel, which means that it's impossible to reconstruct this 9-story pagoda even with our modern technology. Because this tradition of building like a tall pagoda using like a timber, how to say, it didn't continue. So even if you want to reconstruct this pagoda nowadays, if we don't use nails or steel, it's impossible to rebuild this huge pagoda. Now let's talk a little bit more about the historical background of this very impressive pagoda. The entire Imperial Dragon Temple was completed in the year 569, but the pagoda itself was completed in the year 645. So it was almost like 1 century later that they decided to build this 9-story pagoda at this site. Why did they took such a long time to make a decision to build this pagoda at this site? Well, one of the reasons was that for Silla at the time, building this kind of 9-story pagoda required too much resources, too much funding, too much human labors. So at the court, there were debates whether to build this pagoda or not. At the time, in the 6th and 7th century in East Asia, 9-story pagodas were very rare. The tallest pagodas in China were also only 9 stories. Yeah, for large-scale ones like this. Then let's take a look at the political situation of Silla in the 640s. What motivated people to finally build this grandiose pagoda? Well, that was the time when the neighboring kingdoms like Baekje or Goguryeo were invading Silla. And in order to protect their country, the sovereign of Silla, who was Queen Seondeok, asked for help to the Emperor Taizong of the Tang Dynasty in China. But instead of helping Silla, they tried to depose Queen Seondeok. So Silla was in a very difficult situation at the time. And what did they do? They built this pagoda. Why? Why pagoda at that moment? But it had reasons. There were reasons why they built this pagoda during this political difficulties. First, they had a religious reason to build this pagoda. For a long time, there was a belief in Silla that if they built a 9-story pagoda at the Imperial Dragon Temple, then disasters caused by neighboring countries will be subdued. Well, according to this record of formation of Eastern capital written by the monk Anhong in the 7th century, the monk argues that if they built this pagoda, the first story of the pagoda will subdue Japan, the second story China, and then it goes to the 9th story. So the monk was basically arguing that if we build this 9-story pagoda at the Imperial Dragon Temple, we can conquer all the neighboring countries. That was the belief at that time. And second, they also had a practical reason. Well, the archaeologists infer that the original 9-story pagoda at the Imperial Dragon Temple was as high as 263 feet, which is 80 meters. So it's much taller than the Opera House in Sydney, for example. It's not just 9-story building. It was much, much, much taller than contemporary 9-story building. And why was it important to build this huge pagoda? Well, even in contemporary times, countries compete each other to build taller skyscrapers than other countries to show off their technology and power. So for Silla people, who was a little weaker kingdom compared to Baekje and Goguryeo at the time, building this 9-story pagoda was a good way to show their technology and power to their neighboring countries. And to give you a little bit more historical background, at the time, when Queen Seondeok was ruling Silla, the neighboring countries already accepting the Confucianism, which puts higher hierarchy between men and women. So from other countries' perspective, Silla looked a little strange that a woman was ruling the country. So they were thinking that it was a good opportunity to invade Silla. But by building this monumental architectural monument, Queen Seondeok could show off her power and which endowed authority to the queen. So it also had this practical reason. They had practical reason to build this pagoda during that political hardships. And it's very interesting, that people actually believed that this pagoda helped to protect their country. For example, there is this inscription engraved on the reliquary box discovered together with this reliquary set. Well, it was initially a box, but the top part and the bottom parts were lost. And these are the 4 sides of a reliquary box, and it was densely inscribed with some writing. Its year is from this reliquary box was later added to the pagoda, so it was made in the year 872, and one line from this inscription clearly says that the unification of the 3 countries, as well as the peace and joy of the king and officials until today, are indebted to this pagoda. Well, somehow after Queen Seondeok constructed this pagoda, in the following generations, Silla conquered Baekje and Goguryeo and unified the Korean peninsula, as you know. And the people of the unified Silla somehow believed that it's all thanks to this pagoda that they could unify the peninsula and bring the peace to their country. Okay. Now we can move on to the unified Silla period. And a big change in the monastery or temple ground plan that happened during the unified Silla is that they began to build twin pagodas instead of just one single pagoda. And the most famous twin pagoda is the one at the Gamunsa monastery site, which was built in the year 682. This Gamunsa temple began to be built by King Mumu, and during the construction of the monastery, King Mumu passed away, and his son, King Shinmun, continued the construction, and he dedicated the new temple to his father, King Mumu. So this is a temple built by King Mumu and built for King Mumu. And as you may know, King Mumu is the one who unified the Korean peninsula by conquering Baekje and Goguryeo. This is a photograph taken during the archaeological excavation of the West Stone Pagoda of Gamunsa between 1959 and 1960. And in this photograph, you can see the scale of this stone pagoda. It's pretty big, very impressive pagoda. And actually, this person standing on the left is maternal side grandfather. He was one of the major figures who excavated this pagoda in 1960s. And this is his photograph examining details of the reliquary excavated from this pagoda. At the time, he was younger than me, so yeah, it's a really old photograph. And in this photograph, you can see the geographic location of this Gamunsa monastery, and you can see the surviving twin pagodas. And the monastery site is located near the East Sea or Donghae. And by the beach, you can see the Rock of Great King or Daewangam. Oh, this photo is very beautiful, isn't it? This is a photo of the Rock of Great King or Daewangam, and it is known as the place where people buried the cremated ashes of King Mumu. King Mumu, who unified Silla, is also the first Korean king who chose cremation as his funeral. So after cremation, people buried his ashes on this rock. That's a legend, but in the center of this Daewangam, there is some artificial installation. So the legend is probably true to the historical fact. And I will show you this short video that shows the current site of the Gamunsa monastery. Okay. So I just showed you the video of the Gamunsa monastery site, and this is a photograph of the remaining stone bases of the main Buddha hall built in front of the twin pagodas. And the stone bases of this main Buddha hall has very strange installation. Originally, these kind of stones were covering the entire span of this the Buddha hall site, which means that there was some underground space under the main Buddha hall made of these stones. And no other remaining Korean temples have this kind of underground space. So what was the purpose of the underground space under this Buddha hall at the Gamunsa temple? Well, according to the Samgukgyusa, or the memorabilia of the Three Kingdoms, it is written, a space was arranged under the stone steps of the Buddha hall of Gamunsa. This is the explanation of the Gamunsa. And the hall was opened towards the east. This was a preparation for the dragon, the dragon to enter the temple and move around. The place where the remains of the king, it means the King Mumu, the king were buried in accordance with his will, is called the Great King Rock. And the temple is called Gamunsa. The place where the manifested dragon was witnessed later is called Igyeon Pavilion or Igyeondae. So why do we see this word here, dragon? Why does the dragon suddenly appear here? Well, according to the memorabilia of the Three Kingdoms, King Mumu wanted to be reborn as a dragon in order to protect his country, Silla, even after his death. So many people in Silla believed that the king reincarnated into a dragon after his death. So they prepared this special underground space under the main Buddha hall of the Gamunsa monastery to invite the dragon. Yes, so this underground space was prepared for that dragon, the reincarnation of King Mumu. And this is a map that shows the location of the Rock of Great King, Haewangam, where King Mumu was buried. And this is the place of Igyeondae, where people witnessed the reincarnation of the dragon. And this is the place of Gamunsa, which has that special underground space for the main Buddha hall and the twin pagodas. So they were expecting that the dragon, the reincarnation of King Mumu, would fly to this temple. Oh yeah, this is the Igyeondae, and this is the Gamunsa temple site. And this main Buddha hall had a special underground space for the dragon. And then let's take a look at the reliquary set excavated from the West Pagoda. The reliquary set has a close relationship with all this legend related the King Mumu and the dragon. The reliquary consists of this outer reliquary and the inner reliquary. The outer reliquary has relief images of the four heavenly kings, which were believed to be the guardian deity of the Silla kingdom. And the inner reliquary symbolizes the Western Pure Land. You might have heard about the word 극락정토, or the Western Pure Land. That's the place, that's like a Buddhist paradise where many Buddhists wanted to be reborn in their next life. And in order to represent the Western Pure Land, the artisan, the designer of this inner reliquary placed heavenly musicians on inside the reliquary, and in between the heavenly musicians of this paradise, there are small boys made of beautiful green stones, and they are all standing on the lotus flower, because according to the Buddhist scripture, when people are reborn in the Western Pure Land, they are reborn inside lotus flowers. They don't reborn through another human being's body, but they reborn on the lotus flowers like this. So these small boys dancing on the lotus flowers symbolize the rebirth in the Western Pure Land. Oh, and this is a video of this reliquary set from the West Pagoda of Kamunsa that I took at the Gyeongju National Museum last year, I think. So if you go to the Gyeongju National Museum, you can see this reliquary set from Kamunsa. Oh, and this is a crystal bottle which contained the relics of the Buddha. So people excavated this reliquary set in the early 1960s, and in the 1980s, people also found another reliquary set from the East Pagoda. And according to my research, while the West reliquary symbolizes the Western Pure Land, the East Pagoda's reliquary set symbolizes the state protection of the Silla kingdom. This is the inner reliquary from the East Pagoda, and you can see small figurines of the 4 heavenly kings, which, as I just said, were the guardian deities of the Silla kingdom. And then it also has small figurines of the monks, and those monk figurines are holding some ritual implements or making some special hand gestures for a specific Buddhist ritual. So as a matter of fact, those figurines represents the secret ritual known as mudra. And this particular ritual was performed during the Silla Tang Wars. Well, when Silla was going through the unification war, Silla allied with the Tang dynasty in China, but by the end of the unification war, the Tang dynasty wanted to conquer the entire Korean peninsula, so they invaded Silla. So Silla had to fight against the Tang dynasty for 7 years. But in the end, they won the war, and they could unify the unified the Korean peninsula. And according to the memorabilia of the 3 kingdoms, a monk, with the order of King Mumu, a monk named Myeonglang performed this secret ritual of mudra, and when he performed that mudra, the warships of the Tang dynasty just sank by the storms. So they believed that this special ritual of mudra helped them win the war against Tang dynasty. So the East Pagoda symbolizes this special state protection ritual. So it symbolizes the state protection of Silla, while the reliquaries from the West Pagoda symbolizes the Western Pure Land. And although I will not skip the details, there are many small details that implies some kind of movement from the, oops, is that right? Yeah. Oh, I didn't change the order, but anyway, that symbolizes some movement from the east reliquary set to the west reliquary set. Why is that? If we go back to this Silla people's imagination that the Dragon King, the reincarnation of King Mumu, I mean the dragon's flight from the East Sea, that means that the dragon will first visit the East Pagoda and then the West Pagoda. And as we learned, the reliquary set of this East Pagoda symbolizes the state protection, and the West Pagoda symbolizes the Western Pure Land. Why is that? Why is that? Well, if we read through the memorabilia of the three kingdoms, although King Mumu wished to become a great dragon in order to defend his country after death, his monk teacher and people around him thought that dragon is in the karmic category of the animal. Here, the Dharma master, the King Momo's teacher says, how can you wish to be an animal? It means that even though a dragon is a very powerful figure, it is one kind of animal. How could you wish to be reborn into an animal? So in Silla people's mind, it was a huge sacrifice of the king. Instead of to be reborn in the Western Pure Land, he wished to be an animal and continue to defend and protect his country. So, is that? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. 1 second. This is. I have to change the order. This is the east and this is the west. So when the son of King Mumu, King Shinmun, completed the construction of the Gamunsa monastery and the twin pagoda, he specially prepared this reliquary set so that, wishing that once his father visits the East Pagoda as a dragon, and confirms that his country is now being safely protected, then he can move on to the West Pagoda and be reborn in the Western Pure Land. So this Gamunsa monastery and the twin pagoda was built for the state protection of Silla and for King Mumu's rebirth in the Western paradise. Okay, thank you very much. The ending part was a little complicated, but I hope that you enjoyed my talk. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Kim, for this fascinating lecture about Three Kingdoms period and Unified Silla Kingdoms period Buddhist art. Whenever I see this ancient Buddhist art and architecture, that makes me feel like we cannot really imagine this huge face that people had. For them, it was so real. This protection, this magical power. For them, it was so rare and it was so fascinating. And I have on the chat window, I have some questions. Just one question, but you will, of course, can raise your hand and have more questions. So this question is from Charita Takar. Is the Western Pure Land also the abode of the Amitabha Buddha, similar to the Japanese tradition?
Oh, yes, it's exactly the same. So the Buddhist world in Asia shares many things in common. So the Western Pure Land is believed to be the place where the Amitabha Buddha or Amida in Japanese resides. And yeah, it's exactly the same Western Pure Land. So people in India, China, Korea, and Japan, many Buddhists in those countries wished to be reborn in the Western Pure Land. Okay. Thank you for your question.
Any other questions?
I I have a question, and you showed us a wooden bracket model. It
Uh-huh.
seems to be complicated.
Mhm.
And where is that model from? And if we have such a model, why can you not at least use it or use some variation of it to and test whether what kind of model can support the weight at
I see.
different layers?
So, my memory is fuzzy, but some kind of architectural schools department made that model together. So, if you visit the memorial hall, you can also find the explanation. I mean, who made that model? And I think. In theory, if you make a small model, you can also make a bigger model, but there's a difference, difference between the small scale model and then between the small scale model and then actual architecture. So it's fairly difficult to rebuild that huge pagoda, which is 80 meters tall. So it's a big challenge. So if the Korean government invests like a huge amount of money and collects the best surviving artisans in Korea, then maybe they can try to rebuild it. But there's also a bit of problem. Besides the technological challenge, like some Christians in Korea can also complain because they can think why the Korean government is investing such a huge money just for Buddhism. So there can be some how do you say objection to the to the project. So there were some like discussions whether we should rebuild the nine-story pagoda or not, but it has not been realized yet. Yeah. Thank you for your question.
But purely from an architectural viewpoint, aren't there some research going on among the architects, whether what kind of bracket models may support what kind of weight in a little bit more scientific way?
I'm not an architectural historian, so I don't know too much about it, but
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that there are group of scholars who are studying it because it's very
Yeah.
important monument. Yeah.
So we
Thank you.
have some more questions from both Charita and Charita Taka had some very interesting questions. But before Dr. Kim answer to this question, there's another question from Talia. So is Buddhism still very commonly practiced in Korea?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I
so
was reading the question on the chat. Is that the
right.
question
Yeah.
you mentioned about the
Mhm.
twin pagodas?
Can you answer the first question from Talia?
Sure. Yeah. About the twin pagodas.
No, whether Buddhism is still practiced in Korea commonly.
Were there other types of Buddhism practice at the time besides the Pure Land? Yeah, like the Chen or Zen. Oh, good question. Many Buddhist scholars think that besides the Pure Land Buddhism, there were other types of Buddhism practiced in Korea at the time. And Silla also practiced Chen Buddhism or Zen Buddhism or Son Buddhism in Korean pronunciation, but it became widespread a little after this time period. So when they built these twin pagodas, Zen Buddhism was not too popular in Korea at the time yet. And also another question above. Whether the twin pagodas unique to this king's reign or are there other similar Buddhist temples? Well, the twin pagodas at Kamunsa are one of the earliest example, but afterwards, many other temples also began to build a huge number of twin pagodas. And in fact, China also had twin pagodas, starting from the Sui dynasty and also the Tang dynasty. Yeah. But it was in Korea that twin pagoda became much, much more popular than in China. And I think one of the factor was this very important monument, very important twin pagoda built at Kamunsa, that later times, many other Korean or Silla temples began to build twin pagodas. And I have found some traces in which in China that East and West pagodas also symbolize the Western Pure Pagoda, the Western Pure Land and the state protection. But then there are also Chinese twin pagodas that had completely different symbolism. Sorry, sometimes some Chinese twin pagodas symbolized the twin sovereigns, for example, the emperor and the empress dowager, so male sovereign and the female sovereign of their empire. So in different countries, the twin pagodas had sometimes different meanings, also sometimes related meanings. And you also asked the statues. We don't exactly know what kind of Buddha statues the Kamunsa had, because the entire monastery is gone. But as for the dragon, I don't know, 황룡사, imperial dragon temple, based on the remaining document, we know that that temple had 장육존상, or 16, how to say it? Is it called 16-foot Buddha statue? It had a huge Shakyamuni Buddha statue. Yeah. More questions?
Yeah, so there was another question from Talia. So she asked whether Buddhism is still practiced in Korea.
In Korea. Oh, I don't
Yeah.
see the question on the chat
Oh, you
box.
don't see the
Yeah,
question?
good
Okay.
question. Yeah. Buddhism is
So about
still
charities.
very important religion practiced in Korea. Christianity is Christian population is the largest, but the Buddhist population is huge, and there are so many Buddhist monasteries, and most of the major monasteries in Korea have temple stay program. So which means that you can stay at the temple at these special buildings. So instead of staying at a local hotel, if you have a chance, maybe you can try to do the temple stay and stay 1 or 2 days at the monastery, attending the Buddhist ceremony and enjoy the quiet peace of the temple there. And if you don't have time to go to the local places in Korea, you can even try it in Seoul. I think the Jogesa and 봉은사 inside Seoul also have a temple stay program, so you can stay in those temples if you want, instead of going to hotels.
I just a quick check on the, not a Wikipedia, but internet, and there's about 30% the Christianity and Catholicism in Korea and 16% Buddhism.
Thank you. Yeah. And then there are so many people who don't have religions in Korea nowadays.
60%, they say.
Yeah. So I got one more question, whether these Korean pagodas can be compared to Buddhist stupas in India, because both of the monuments contains the Buddha's relics. Yes, in fact, there are the same type of monuments. When the Buddhism transmitted from India through Central Asia to East Asia, this monument stupa gradually transformed into pagoda. And pagoda in Chinese language is called ta, or ta, and ta came from the Sanskrit word stupa. Disappeared, tu became ta, so tapa, ta, it became tap in Korean. And pagoda is Western, how to say, Western terminology calling this which is basically same as stupa. Yeah. Let's see.
This is not a question, but there's a comment from the Facebook, and I'll just send it out to you, and if you care today, you can read it out. But yeah, it's interesting that becoming a dragon was considered less than returning as a human. Koreans today consider leaping the dragon's gate so important, but Silla so humanistic.
What does the leaping the dragon's gate mean? Leaping the dragon's gate?
Oh, I think it's that the symbolism of a dragon,
등용문?
the 등용문,
Passing the state
등용문,
exam?
the passing the state exam.
And what does that question mean? Was Silla so humanistic? What's the relationship between being humanistic and 등용문? Oh, I got the point. So the Silla people thought that it's so much better to be reborn as a human or reborn in the Pure Land rather than being reborn as an animal. So the question is, was Silla so humanistic? The answer is, according to the Buddhist cosmology, there are 6 different types of categories of rebirth. So there are good rebirths and bad rebirths. Good rebirths include the rebirth as a human being, rebirth as minor god, 천신 asura. Minor god known as asura, and the rebirth in the heavenly realm, including the Western Pure Land. And the bad categories of rebirth include rebirth, the hell, like hell beings, rebirth into hungry ghosts, and rebirth into animals. So rebirth as an animal was counted as a bad karma. So what Silla people thought is that although a dragon is a very powerful figure, it is still an animal, so it's not a good rebirth. That's what Silla people thought. So the way how they thought is not the matter of humanism, but the way how they thought was based on this Buddhist cosmology. Yeah.
Does anyone have any other questions for Dr. Kim? Oh, Raquel, you're muted.
Could you turn on the speaker?
Can you hear me now?
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't realize. The central pillar in the pagoda, in many ancient old societies, you have the world tree, and I'm wondering if that's what it represents.
World tree?
World tree, yes. The world axis mundi,
Oh yeah, axis mundi. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the heart pillar, its origin is actually the similar type of pillar at the top of Indian stupa. And those pillars symbolizes axis mundi, the the cosmic pillar of the cosmos. So it has exactly the same symbolism. Thank you
That's
for
very ancient. Yes.
Yes,
Thank
yes,
you.
it is.
Could you speak to a little bit about why the pagodas went to stone? Because I think many times they're made of wood. Even in Japan, you see, I mean, of course, wood is always prone to fire. So I know in Japan that's a problem. But we were a brick in India, but then we went to really, because stone is not an easy material to work with. And
Right, right. We don't exactly know the reason. Like it's only in Korea that people built a lot of stone pagodas. But one of the reasons may be that we have a lot of like granite stones in Korea. The granite stone is everywhere in Korea, so they used it to build many things, including the tombs and the like the defense walls, and also for Buddhist statues. And the very famous Buddhist cave, Sakura, was also built with granite. So there were many artisans who were very skilled to use this particular stone. That could be one of the reasons why they began to build stone pagodas in Korea. Yeah. There could be more like a symbolic reasons, but we don't know too much about it yet. Yeah.
But do you think it was also a means of clearing the land so that they could till it, so that they could work the land to plant? I mean, long, long ago, you know.
I am not sure. What's the relationship between the plowing the land and the stone?
Oh, no, clearing the land. If you said it was granite, and
Uh-huh.
I mean, later on, maybe they cut the stone deliberately, but I wonder if originally they started to build in stone because it was a means of clearing the land. You know, people do that in some places to build walls. So they clear the land of all the stones so they can plow the fields and grow things, you know. I mean,
That
that's
I
very,
am.
would be very old, you know, originally.
I see. That I don't know too much about it. But we know that in the beginning period, we also built timber pagodas first, and at some point, they began to translate the timber pagoda into stone pagoda. And one of the advantage of stone pagoda is that they can stay for a longer time. For a timber pagoda, you have to constantly restore this and that, this and that part. You have to replace the rotten part with a new wood. But the stone pagoda is much more stable. So that could be one of the reasons. Yeah. And symbolically, I mean, it's my own thinking, so I cannot really approve it. But traditionally in East Asia, also in Korea, people used timber for the architecture for living people, and they used stone for the dead people, like a tombs. And the pagoda is a monument enshrining the Buddha's relics. So in a sense, it's a kind of tomb monument. So in order to carry that symbolism, they might adopted the stone for the building medium of a pagoda. That could be one of the reasons, but we cannot prove it though, because there's no remaining historical document about it. Yeah.
Yeah, so the discussion is going very, very interesting, but I hate to say that we have very little time left, maybe overtime. So maybe can we have one more question, if Dr. Kim, if you don't mind? Maybe one more
Can stay
question.
longer. When was reliquary from Hwangyongsa of Hurt Pillar excavated? Okay. Well, those reliquaries set from the Hwangyongsa were actually not excavated. They were stolen in, if my memory is correct, probably 1960s. Some thieves stole them. But a few years later, policemen caught them, and they found those reliquary sets, and the reliquary sets were retrieved to they were sent to the National Museum. But unfortunately, some of the objects taken out from the stone were lost. So we don't have intact set of the reliquaries and the offerings. It's a big pity. Yeah.
Okay. There was one comment about the stone, but yeah, that it was popular. It was very popular. Yeah, and thank you so much for this wonderful talk, and thank you all for wonderful questions, very fascinating discussions. And the recorded lecture, a version of this lecture will be posted on KCSB's website. And I hope everyone will come back for our second lecture, which is, I think, scheduled in 2 weeks. Okay, thank you, everyone.